Welcome to the Council Planning Committee meeting of the 17th of May. We have with us Councillor Basalt, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Harvey, Deputy Lord Mayor and myself. Confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. Councillor Basalt, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Ayes have it. Consideration of supplementary items. There are none? There are none. Indication of pecuniary and conflicts of interest. Who? Transfer of agenda items. No. And then we have planning authority items, consideration of items with deputations. We do have one, which is item 6.1.2. Thank you, Deputy. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Ayes have it. So we now move on to item 6.1.2. Council is now acting as a planning authority. We do have a 3 deputations, and we'll first hear from Mr. Richard Leonard. Yes. So if you'd like to sit at that desk just in front of you, in the middle, and grab one of those microphones and pull it as close to you as you're able to. We'll give you 5 minutes to speak, and then we'll have some questions for you.
I have a couple of handouts.
Yep.
Could I hand them out before we start the class?
Great,
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, good to go.
Yeah, you want to move around so that it might be easier.
You might be able to see as well.
Just going to move that along.
Thanks.
Do you have additional copies?
Oh, yes.
And then we'll keep. All right, we'll get the clock started. Yeah, you don't have to stand. You can sit. You can sit if you like. Or
Okay.
and yeah, we'll have 5 minutes, and then we'll have some questions for you.
Okay. Well, I'm Richard Leonard. I'm a neighbour. I've been in Devonshire Square, which adjoins the property, for over 36 years. So I've got quite a few concerns about this. I've referred to 10 major issues in my set of representations, but as I've only got 5 minutes, I'll just refer to a few of the main ones that I have. So first up, I'll just go with all the original application. It had a lot of omissions and misrepresentations. We still, especially the height, we still don't know what the height is. The council's coming up with a figure of 8.3. On top of that, the planner has referred to a different figure, to Mr. Ryan, who will also be talking later, about 0.6 of a metre difference. It's made it very difficult for us as observers to actually work out what's going on with the height. I think we deserve better than that as long-term residents. I've been there 36 years, lots of the other residents have been longer. It's important too to consider that we've had 21 sets of objections, or somewhere between 20 and 23, because there's 3 different figures have been referred to in different parts of the documentation. I talked to 19 people. Every one of them was appalled at this proposal. No one said it was good. I could have got similar responses, I'm sure, if I kept talking to others, but I only had so much time. There's still a lot of uncertainty about the usage. We're being told that the downstairs is going to be a workshop. Well, it's a pretty strange workshop. It's got a wooden floor, it's got a huge deck, it's got a full bathroom. In an initial request to the applicant, she didn't respond to the question on the bathroom, and she responded incorrectly to the question on the area. She referred to the upstairs area. which is quite a bit smaller. There's no ramp to it. There's only steps. Where are you going to put the wheelbarrow? Where are you going to put the lawnmower? Looking at it, it smacks to me of Airbnb or other short stay accommodation. The council planning people have looked at it and said if there's a change of use they can put in an application, but we have a big problem at the moment because there is a stalemate between the council and the state government. Pretty well anyone can get away with changing use without an application at the moment. There are several Airbnbs in the area. I know of at least 7 in the immediate area within the block, within this precinct, and I'm not aware of any of them ever having put in an application. So I think the whole thing needs to be rejected and go back to stage 1 for reapplication because there's too many uncertainties with this proposal. Quickly on heritage. This house is believed to be 1852. That's 171 years old. It has unique character. There's a lot of history to it. It's only less than 20 years younger than Narina. Runnymede. Narina was built in 1836, Runnymede in 1844. Imagine the furor if somebody came up with a proposal like this to put an ugly building that's going to be 8 metres high, which is 1/5 the height of this proposed stadium. It just wouldn't happen, and it shouldn't happen here. Amy Roundtree, in her 1951 publication, Battery Point, today and yesterday, referred to the horrible fate of Heathfield.
There's 30 seconds left, so if you could wrap
Sorry?
up. 30 seconds left, if you can wrap up. Then 30 seconds left. If you can wrap up. Then 30 seconds left.
Oh, okay. Well, Heathfield, 1951, that was 120 years old. What we have now is a property that's 170 years old with intact grounds and an intact precinct. It should not be allowed to go ahead, and I hope you'll consider what I've said. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Are there any questions of... I'll state that we might have some questions for you. So, are there any questions from the floor? Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. Mr. Leonard, thanks for your deputation and representation. Given we have this for approval tonight, and I hear your concerns, but is there anything that you would suggest that could improve what we have before us? Any sort of other conditions?
Information or...
Conditions.
Okay, well, look, all the people I've talked to seem to be quite happy with the idea. They're not actually against the proposal, nor am I, what we consider a reasonable proposal. But this one, 8 metres high, as you can see from what I've given you there is shade all over my back property quite early in the piece. I had a look this afternoon and at 1:25 all the shade had gone from my property. Now that's going to affect not only the neighbours, especially the ones in Grant Street, but it's also going to significantly affect that house. Now I know the owners want to put the building up, but look, if I want to put solar panels on my roof, because mine's almost a heritage house, I'd have trouble. So I don't think it's appropriate that a building that's going to take all the sunlight should be able to be put on that, in that position. But I think a single story would be fine. I think the main problem, as far as this goes for most of us, is the height.
Okay.
The heritage people have looked at it and they don't seem to see it as a problem, but I don't think they've looked into it closely enough. And the one thing they've suggested is that the roof colour be changed. Well, that's all well and good, but the problem is it's so high, most of us won't be able to see the roof. So in answer to your question, the short answer is I think a single story or even a 1.5 story with a different roof line would probably be acceptable.
Councillor Harvey.
So can you describe how you use your backyard? Where's your clothesline? And do you have veggie patches?
It's just over the fence from the boundary, and that's because there were originally 2 clotheslines at my house. One was further back, but at some point the previous owners put one at the back because that's the only place that gets much sun.
And will you have sun for your clothesline and sun for your veggie patch?
Look, I don't think it's going to affect the sun for me, but I'm concerned about my other neighbours. It's really going to seriously affect the sunlight to numbers 1 and 3 Brown Street, and also 120, 129 and 131 Warwick Street.
Okay,
But
thank you.
the height doesn't. You know, like I know views aren't really an issue for planning, but there's a lot of concerns with streetscape. Well, we're the occupants of the street. Most of us have been there a very long time, and I think some consideration should be given to what we've got to look at. And I can tell you, I'm not very happy about the idea of an 8 metre high structure just in my backyard. If you look at those photos, that photo I've given you, those trees in the corner are 4 metres high. So just try and imagine how high that structure is going to be looking at it from my back. Landing just behind my back door.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Thanks a lot. If you want to take your seat, we'll call Mr. Vincent Ryan.
Now, I've got some photos myself, but the thing is I've only got one of each.
We'll just
Pass them round and I'll mix them near the end, please. So you pass them round?
Yeah, you pass them round.
I ran out of paper.
All right.
Couldn't afford it.
All right, same. If you can take your seat,
thing.
grab the microphone as close to you as you're able to. You'll have 5 minutes to speak. We'll give you a warning at 30 seconds left, and then we'll have some questions for you.
And we're right, are we?
Very good. Good to go.
Can I go?
We're
We're off.
for it.
I'll just say, I'll read it. Good evening to all. I'm Vincent Ryan. I've lived at number 3 Brown Street for over 30 years. My home is 2-storey. My property backs onto 127 Warwick. That's where all the problems start. No doubt you all have been advised of my initial presentation. I had to speak tonight because I will be the one most affected by the construction of this 2-storey metal structure. It is allowed to proceed in this present form. It has come to my attention that I was initially informed of the height of the structure by Ash at the designers, that it was going to be 7.2 to 7.7 metres due to the slope of the land. But then, reading the council report on page 71, it states the maximum height will be 8.3. This is mind-blowing. An 8.3 metre wall on my back fence. By the way, which measurements correct? This will alter the shadow plans. Could be shadows all year. Even 7.2 to 7.7 is bad enough. You have to remember that my bedrooms are downstairs, virtually on natural ground level, due to the slope of my block. As you would have seen from the shadow plans, all of my place will be covered in shadow, no sunlight, all of winter mornings. Even now in early autumn, I am getting varying sunlight. That's with the gum trees on their property at only 4.7 metres high. I expect it will carry over into spring. Obviously, their 2-storey structure won't be affected by any shadows in any season. We're ridiculously too high. Again, too high. I see that the council development engineer design and other council officers have been involved in the assessment. Do any of these officers venture out to see the actual site and visit those who, as in my case, will be greatly affected by this mammoth structure? No one has had the courtesy to contact me and see the scope of this structure from my, at the moment, sun-facing home. I'll have a great wall on my boundary. If this 2 structure is allowed to go ahead in its current form, I can assure you that my quality of life is going to be greatly compromised. It is just too big. 8.3, even at 7.7, and I'm definitely not the only one who will suffer from this. Why couldn't they have had their workshop / bathroom built where their old shed carport is, and thus making their ancillary dwelling 1-storey? This structure should not have made it this far. I note on page 2 headlines for the agenda for tonight, the values of council. People. We care about people. Let's hope you do. And then on my photos, photo 1 and photo 2 are from my upstairs deck and kitchen. where most of my, this structure goes ahead at 8.3, at what we're saying, where most of my view of the northeast will disappear. I'm going off the exact heights of the trees, the gum trees there, which are definitely 4.7 metres high. And photo 2 and 3 and 4 from downstairs, where most of everything will disappear. This is where my bedrooms are. I did try and get a rear Photoshop of the structure, but I was unable to do it. No doubt I've forgotten something. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the floor? Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you for coming in. I just wanted to ask about some similar questions to the Deputy Lord Mayor asked the previous respondent, just regarding the siting of your clothesline and your gardens.
My clothesline is in the photo downstairs, which is, my backyard is only 7 or 8 metres of depth, and you'll see the clothesline there folded up right behind there. It'll never see daylight again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Thanks a lot. Would you like to take your seat?
Okay, that right?
Yep.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now call the applicant, Amanda Quealy.
We've only got 2 representatives.
We've only got 2 representatives and the applicant on our list.
Are you registered?
Got an acknowledgement.
Got an acknowledgement?
Do a deputation.
Oh, well, look, if
Paul, Chair.
yeah, look, if you're here, we're happy to hear from you. So apologies for that. It just wasn't on the. No, that's fine. Well, you're here. I don't know your name, so you'll have to. You'll have to introduce yourself and.
I'll press the button here.
No need to press anything. Just pull.
Loud enough anyhow.
Just pull the microphone just as close to you as you're able to. You'll have 5 minutes to speak. And
My name's Mark Richards. My wife is Marcia, sitting at the back. We live at 119 Warwick Street, which is an 1836 or before built building of great significance to Hobart. It's registered in the as a significant building. Okay. There's many other buildings around the area, so there's in fact there's 19 buildings 19 households that surround this new application. 19. My time started yet?
yes.
We find that this whole thing is going to be an erosion and degradation of this important historical precinct. And I know there's some sort of dispute or whatever between Heritage, both the council and elsewhere in Tasmania at the moment, but I don't think it should be eroded because of this this dispute, that heritage value is eroded. The amenity for the neighbourhood for long-time residents will be badly affected. This is an imposing and really an ugly structure. I'm a naval architect, marine architect. I've also designed buildings and things. This is really ugly. It's not just imposing, but it's actually ugly. It's totally out of scale for the area. Now, in the heritage report, if you go to attachment C, Cultural Heritage Report, page 118, item 4, says that the scale of everything in the area is to a certain scale, okay? This is totally out of whack to the scale. This is point number 4. It's part of the heritage, the council heritage people have to look into. There's 5 points, okay? This is number 4. The 5th point is that the gardens and whatever of the heritage of these heritage homes is of just as great a value. I think you can look that up. That's item 5. That's been totally ignored in the submission back to, recommendations back to council, okay? I think the whole thing's a bit deceptive, the whole way it's been put together as an ancillary building. Having separate bathrooms and separate stairwells. Now, it makes no logic if you go up there. You walk up one set of stairs onto a balcony, you could do that, walk across and then go up another set of stairs to the upper level. No, they built two separate stairwells. So it shows you an intent for the future, okay? So I believe this is going to turn into a multi-unit property. Not too sure, but I think the current residence is also being sublet or something, possibly. This can be answered. Okay, specific dimensions. Now, I've been designer since 1972. So I've had a look at the SMEEKS drawings. The overall height I measure at the moment on the drawings, mind you, this is only a DA, is 8.4 metres above natural ground level at the lower end at the eaves of the highest point of the building. 8.4, not 8.3, which is in everything that you have at the moment. Now, added to that, it's showing solar panels dead flat on the top of the roof. I haven't seen anywhere where you get dead flat solar panels in Hobart. Optimum angles 43 degrees, your latitude. Even if I took that at 35 degrees, which gives you a small loss, you add another 700 to 800 mil to the height of the building. Now, on one of the SMEEKS drawings, which is on one of the pages, page 71, attachment A, you'll see that the solar panels are the overshadowing drawings to reflect the new height, including solar. Attachment B, overshadowing, I'm trying to find the right, sheet 1 of 2. There's one of the views there shows winter at 9 a.m. It actually shows a shadow coming off the solar panels there, i.e. they were shown at an elevation, then the rest of the views don't show it. So the draftsperson that was drawing it, I know draftsmen, I've run drawing offices, maybe forgot to take it off that drawing. So there's no reason to have them flat, they will be elevated. So that adds to the height, which overshadows our poor people who live in Brown Street. So, I'm not too sure about the boundaries, haven't had time to look at it. Normally you've got a 4 metre at the rear, it's 1.7 metres. Is that?
30 seconds left if you'd like to wrap up.
Anyhow, I'll summate, that's it. I just think it's deceptive, the way it's been put together. Should be considered as multi-dwelling. I think there's parking issues related to that. And I think it should be put back in as a multi-use dwelling.
Thanks a lot. Are there any questions from the floor? Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Thanks for coming in, Mr Richards. I grew up not far up the road. There's a number of sort of reasonably modern buildings around that area, but not quite at that same scale. I assume you've been there when a number of those have been built. Were there objections from the community for those buildings, sort of across the road in particular?
We've been there for 10 years, so they predate that. When we were doing they had to redo the heritage on our place because heritage people forgot next door and we co-joined. So it was redone, and we've been very careful to keep not just the streetscape but the whole property in that sort of thing. Now, I can't talk about the past, so what was put there before. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Deputy?
Yeah, thanks. Through you. Thank you very much. So is it 131?
119 Warwick Street.
119.
Yeah, we're down the front. We're not affected by the sunlight problems.
Right, no, I understand that.
And,
so
and our backyard is going to be...
So I suppose...
Sorry?
Sorry, you keep
I
going.
apologise.
You keep going, that's right. So your backyard's not affected?
Not by sunlight problem, no.
Just in relation to streetscape, because I think the heritage officer has said that, you know, the facades and streetscape are important, and this sits behind that. What sort of impact do you think there will be in relation to the streetscape?
tried to make that point earlier. That
well,
these heritage people, these heritage properties are not just the streetscape. It's also the fact they have backyards, and it's a rare place in Hobart that's going to be totally lost from this. People's backyards are going to disappear.
Thank you.
The submission was for a garden on the property, and there won't be any garden area left. So.
Any other questions? No. Thanks a lot.
Yep. Thank you very much for
Take a seat.
allowing me to speak.
No problem. Okay, we'll now get to the applicant, Ms. Amanda Quealy. Just like everybody else, we'll have 5 minutes, and I'll give you a warning at 30 seconds if you could do your best to address some of the concerns that have been raised by the deputations before.
Thank you. I might just start by saying that just to clarify a few points of error. One is the property is not sublet, it's our family home. My husband and I, who live there with our son, are in our 60s, and we're not building an Airbnb, we're building an ancillary dwelling granny flat so that we're allowed to stay in the area. We want to remain living in our community where we can walk to the city. At the moment we walk to work in town, and so there seems to be an undertone of mistrust and fear around what this property is going to be used for. So we want to downsize from our family home into being able to stay in the same location. And as I outlined in the application, we don't have any storage. We've got our vacuum cleaner, and we've got all sorts of things in our back bedroom because, as you imagine, that small house, existing house, doesn't have a lot of storage. I think the other point is that our house is not heritage listed. There's a lot of sort of fear mongering around not in my backyard type mentality. We don't have a heritage house. Yes, there is a heritage overlay where we are, but as has been pointed out there by your heritage consultants who did come on site and did take quite a lot of notice of the backyard and where the boundaries meet in terms of the it doesn't impact streetscape, it doesn't deter from the properties that are there. The other point I think has been made around design and height and bulk of the building. We have designed this building not to be a replica of an old worldy house, and in actual fact many architects would say that that is not really best design, that if you start to build something that competes with the existing property, it's not really the way to go. If you look at a lot of properties in Battery Point with new modern extensions in the rear, then it's obviously an acceptable design solution. We've built it 2-storey in order to accommodate a range of things. One is to give ourselves extra space in terms of storage. The downstairs is not a habitable space, and we haven't applied for that. It's a studio, workshop, it's things where we can do things, where we can do activities, where we can put our gardening tools, etc. We do have a small shed now, but the carport, the roof is already deteriorating, and it's not really fit for purpose, the existing carport on the block. The other point is that the height is not over 8 metres, and the design of the building has been within the regulations around the height, a 60 square metre habitable space from the external part of the building to meet the granny flat ancillary dwelling requirements, and so the building is compliant with the planning scheme, as your officers have pointed out, with regard to the setbacks to the boundaries, with regards to the height, and with regard to the floor space. So we only have 60 square metres of habitable space on the levels. And the reason that we have 2 decks and two entries is because this is not it's not a townhouse. It's not 2 apartments. It's actually requires, and this was part of the design process, and we built outside because, as you're probably aware, we have a big issue with sunlight in terms of vitamin D in Tasmania. We want as much outdoor space to sit as we possibly can. There's been a lot of talk also about overshadowing. We've had quite extensive work done in terms of looking at the sun and the overshadowing, and in actual fact, The last person who spoke, 119 Warwick Street, is quite far from our property, so that seems to me rather fear-mongering as opposed to having any direct impact on what we're proposing. Number 1 Brown Street, which is directly at the back of our existing property, there is already a large wall. They have a shed on the other side, and their actual house is quite far away from the proposed dwelling. There's no impact there. Number 3, which is Vince. Vince has a shed. His house is actually quite high up, and he overlooks onto our property now. And again, he doesn't have any habitable
30
space
seconds left.
on the boundary. And Devonshire Square we don't see any need for that either, because the drawings and the plans already show that we have addressed the issues around overshadowing. So it's really trying to appeal to the rental crises. It means that we can release that main house for a family, maybe for our own family and children, and infill development, as far as I understand, is a policy of council. And so we're guided by council guidelines, council policy, and the need for more housing in a city so that people can walk to work and they can remain within the communities, and that we don't have to live and move elsewhere. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Questions? I've got Councillor Kelly and then Councillor Basalt.
Through you, Chair, is there any reason why it's so high off the ground there in the stilts?
That's because there's a flood overlay. So during the design process, we engaged the engineers to have a look at the water. We did put in a large drain by engineers when we bought the property, because to capture runoff, because it's a sort of at the bottom, coming down a hill. I think to tell you the extent of the drain, it was about $50,000 worth. So the engineers have said that to meet council approval, it should be on stilts to allow for any future flooding that would occur to be able to go under the property.
Yeah, I thought that might have been the case, but to me it just seems to be abnormally high, and without drilling down too much at the moment.
I think that's right. I mean, that wasn't our preference. It was really around what the requirements were with regard to engineering.
Because, yeah, I mean, that's adding a fair chunk of height to it. I'd be surprised if you had to be some metre, it looks like to me on this.
I think it's 1 metre off the
graphic
ground.
design. Through you, Chair, to the Director.
We'll leave questions for the Director. We'll do the questions for the...
But it relates to this very point. To do that later? Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. No, that's all.
Thank you. Do you have any more specific description of what your proposed use is of the lower level, which is some 93 square metres of workshop space, without actually drive or flat access to it?
So we're not proposing to put the lawnmower in there. We're proposing to, we have a lot of hobbies. We reupholster chairs, we do pottery. We're in our 60s. We're looking to downsize and spend more time doing things on our hobbies that when we give up work. My husband already works part-time, and so we're trying to plan for our future and stay living in that neighbourhood. So it seemed to us, rather than building a separate shed or building which takes up more of the block and inhibits the amount of garden space that we actually have to use to grow vegetables. We've grown tomatoes in the past. We've got an almond tree, all of those sorts of things. We've got some fruit trees in our backyard. We really want to try and make that so that we can actually use that outdoor space too. And it's also a cost issue, because it's much more cost effective for us to build it as one, rather than build a granny flat and a balcony and whatever else, and then build a second shed for us to put other things in and spend some time there.
Any other questions? Councillor Labega?
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, I just noted that you talked about the shadowing and saying that it has no impact on a number of the properties, and I think you were referring specifically to the built area of those properties. but the respondents have all sort of said that it is going to overshadow their vegetable gardens, their gardens and their clotheslines. Do you acknowledge that their properties, their actual property, not the built section, but the actual garden areas of some of those houses will be overshadowed?
Number 1 Brown Street is not abutting this new development. It abuts our, we've sort of got 2 parts to our garden and we want to use the existing space. So at the back of our existing house we have a small fenced-in garden, and that's where we adjoin 1 Brown Street. And there's a wall, would be nearly as high as those windows, already there, and that they've got a shed at the back, and obviously they front onto Brown Street. They're much higher than us, so there's no impact for number 1. Number 3, there's yes, I know Vince has a washing lounge and an old shed at the back there already, and I mean I'm only guided by, I'm no expert on design, but I'm guided by the plans in terms of the overshadowing that's been prepared, you know, on a professional basis. In terms of Rich's property in Devonshire Place, I think he did, at the end of the day, acknowledge that it really wouldn't have any great impact on overshadowing for him, because in actual fact it's probably more, he's more concerned about looking in, instead of looking into our backyard, to looking at the side of a wall. But his house is quite far back, because he's on Devonshire Place. His house is quite far back from the boundaries that we share. So I don't really see any impact there. And the other one is 125 Warwick Street, which is up the laneway to the right. And interestingly, 123 have not made any impact made any complaints either.
Every adjacent property, because I think the point is made, really.
So I think 125, which is on the northern side, there was something in the plan around. They must be 3 to 100 metres more away from us. So
point of order.
The points, Deputy.
Point of order. I don't know that this is actually. I mean, I suppose this is a question, but are we not looking at the Historic Heritage Code as the only performance criteria?
Yeah, I'll look. I think the point in I think it would. That was a point I was going to make later on, but we keep the answers. We do have quite a bit to get through, so we'll get through it. But I think your answer's been noted.
Sure. Happy with that. Thanks, Chair.
Any other questions? No. Thank you. You want to take your seat, and we'll get into it. We do have and thanks very much. We do have a recommendation here. Did anybody want to kick off by moving the motion for debate? Deputy?
I'll put the motion as it is, Chair, and I know Councillor Kelly has some questions, yep. But as I said before, I mean, this is an ancillary dwelling. We're only looking at Historic Heritage Code, and it's quite clear from the report that we have before us that this doesn't look at overshadowing and various other things and setback. But I suppose just one question that I do have is the height. This is in the building envelope as well, is it not? Through you.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, that's correct. It's well within the building envelope. If it exceeded the building envelope, then overshadowing and the like could be considered. Because it's compliant with the building envelope, overshadowing is not a matter that we can consider with this application.
And just another point, I think this is an ancillary dwelling. It is on quite a large block, and whilst there are a lot of different neighbours from Brown Street and around this block, I think this is an acceptable use of a property, particularly if you want to be staying in place and providing more residences within Hobart. And I do take the point, and I think that was made very clear, that nobody wants visitor accommodation or things change the visitor accommodation.
We'll go to Councillor Kelly because I know he had some questions.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you to the Director, is there any, what's the height in this instance that, of course, as being in a flood area, that is there any guidance given as to how high that must be or not be?
Yeah, the requirement is 300 millimetres above forecasted flood levels. The advice from the officers is that the 1 metre proposed is compliant with that requirement.
So it could be reduced by some 700 mil?
No, it's above the flood level. So the flooding occurs above the ground level, obviously.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
So you've got to take that flooding level into account. Then you add 300 millimetres above that. So I don't have the specific figure as to the flooding before me, but because the proposal is within the building envelope, it would be very difficult to sustain a condition requiring a reduction in height.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Councillor Passat.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the Director, what's the maximum floor space allowable for an ancillary dwelling?
60 square metres.
And how is that defined?
It's internal floor area contained by walls and a roof.
And how does having a habitable floor space directly attached to that same ancillary dwelling change or alter that definition? So there's a habitable floor space that is part of this proposal, because this proposal, let's remember, is 220 square metres of habitable space.
Yeah.
So how does that marry with the 59.8 square metres of habitable space, bearing in mind that the proposal also has an additional 13.4 square metres of void, and how does that fit into the 60 square metres?
The storage area or studio, you can certainly have a storage or studio area associated with a dwelling. So what you've got here is you've got an existing dwelling, you've got an ancillary dwelling, and you've got a studio storage space. And that's all consistent with the provisions of the scheme and is allowed for under the scheme.
And the addition of the 2 square metres for the bathroom downstairs in the storage area would not be considered part of the ancillary dwelling?
No.
Any other comment or questions? You're not finished.
Sorry, yeah,
You finish
one
off,
more
yeah.
if I may, Chair. When we talk about streetscapes and heritage precincts, is there a consideration made by the heritage officers for overlooking gross views of the street? So you may not be able to see it from Warwick Street, but this house and property is highly visible from many, many other areas of West Hobart. Does the heritage officer take that into account with regard to streetscapes?
The heritage officer's assessment, it does include views from Brown, from Devonshire Square, so they have taken into account other surrounding streets in terms of visibility of this building, and they've concluded that they won't have any significant impact on those streetscapes, while visible from it, down the side of existing houses. It's not a significant view.
Councillor Loberger.
Just through you, Chair, I have a question for the Director as well. Just given that this application relies on a performance criteria with regards to the Historic Heritage Code, if we were to knock it back tonight, would that be an appellable decision? And I guess I'm asking what your thoughts are on our chances of defending a knockback if we knock this back under that Historic Heritage Code.
Look, it's my qualified opinion that you would have limited chance of defending a refusal under the Heritage Code for this application before Appeals Tribunal. And I'd question whether you'd get a qualified person to be able to defend it.
Okay. Just one more question, just with regards to the heritage, the streetscape issue. Just through you, Chair. Are gardens, I mean, one of the respondents did mention that gardens are part of the properties. It's not just the houses. Have we taken that into have we assessed the gardens, I guess I'm trying to say, as well as the actual built properties in that assessment?
So the officers in this case have not are not of the view that the garden itself has any significance so far as the precinct is concerned, and therefore has not argued that that's a matter that would warrant refusal under.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments or debate? Look, I'll just say, because I know there's been a lot of suggestions one way or another on this that aren't really, from reading the report, relevant to the actual discretions that we have. The discretion that we have being heritage, and it's a similar situation that we've seen with other applications where it's a non-heritage listed building in a heritage listed area. Just curious if we can get some explanation or summary as to why the outcome is different to some of the ones we've seen in the past, given the nature of the discretion. Yeah, look, well, I could draw on the Alexandra Street application that we had at the last meeting, the meeting before. That was for a demolition of an existing house at the front of the lot. Admittedly, there was questions about its visibility, but in this instance, this is a new structure, the rear of the site, not particularly visible from adjacent streets, and hence the officer's opinion that it does not conflict with that code provisions. Thank you. Look, I'll be supporting this. I think as per the officer's report and the fact that this is it's an internal lot, and given the discretions that we have, I think from the perspective of us assessing the scheme that we have in front of us, I think the outcome is pretty clear, and I think this will, as has been said, put some more beds in areas where we need beds, and it is ultimately, I would say with some confidence, it is compliant with the scheme and the rules of the day. So, although that said, it looks like Councillor Basalt has some words that he wants to say.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Only because I'll just foreshadow refusal, even though I suspect it's not going to get there. I can't support this largely on the heritage discretionary grounds that we have, because Warwick Street sits in the centre of the Lansdowne Crescent Bowl. Every house above, this is quite low, every house above and on the opposite side of the bowl looks at this particular precinct, and there are significant buildings of the early 1800s. I'm really not sure why this house is not heritage listed. Of all the houses that we've seen that are heritage listed, this is one that...
No, sorry. The once you're sitting in the gallery, everyone's supposed to... No, sorry.
So it probably, it's surprising to me that it's not, but I do appreciate the fact that it's not, so I can't take that into consideration. However, the streetscape, the broad streetscape of this particular area, looking across all of these heritage buildings, I think that this particular build, with its scale and bulk, detracts from the global streetscape of the West Hobart Bowl, and for that reason, I can't support the officer's recommendations.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I went up today and had a good look at the site. I know the area reasonably well, but I thought I'll go up and speak to some of the neighbours about it. And I was quite shocked, actually, off the plans and the officer's report. I don't think it belies what the real impact there is. And we talk about streetscape, and as the Director just confirmed, we have to consider the neighbours and there's some 19 neighbours or whatever. But also too, you go to the other side towards Guildford Young College on the hill, just on the other side. That looks straight down onto this area here, and you're going to see this very bulky, shiny tin. I believe, disappointingly, it lacks any architectural merit, this place. That to one side, and it's probably not contestable. And we've seen the huge mistake made at Lower Jordan Hill Road with the Bunnings-like store, white structure that you can see from all of West Hobart looking from the other side. So that streetscape or the impact it has on the area should be a bit more global than just standing with your hands in your pocket looking up a very narrow driveway in the distance. So we have heard how it does have a major impact on some of these neighbours here, and how this house has been just mentioned, how this 1840 house, whatever it is, 170-year-old house, is not on the heritage register or list, it just staggers me. Every other house around it is. It does have great significance. Look, putting it all into the pot, there's absolutely no way known I can support this application, and I think there are some very, very strong grounds, if you have a good look at the property and consider what I just said, for heritage reasons that are very, very contestable.
Okay, so that's the end of the debate. I'll put the motion as for approval as put by the Deputy Lord Mayor. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no.
No.
Show of hands, all those in favour. And against? Thank you. So that's carried. Thank you all for your contributions. We'll move on to the next item, which is 6.1.1, 8 to 12 Wilmot Street, Hobart. Anybody like to kick things off? Anybody want to move a motion for discussion?
I'll move the motions as listed.
So we've got the motion, we've got the officer's recommendations. We'll wait for the room to filter out. Okay. So we've got the motion for approval from Councillor Elliott. Is there any discussion or questions? Okay. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Show of hands. All those in favour. All those against? Okay, we'll move on to the... sorry.
A motion for refusal.
Okay, so we've got a motion for refusal.
Based on...
Is there any comments or questions on that? Councillor Passat.
Is there any reason why this is any different, through you, to the Director, any different to any other short stay accommodation? Stock standard, same refusal problem. Right.
Just a comment, the only difference I can see is it's in a mixed use zone, and the policy that or the changes we've put to the state, or sorry, to the Tas Planning Commission, would be to reject properties in the residential zone, and we're not against properties in the mixed use zone. Hence, there's a difference, so this one would pass if we had changes to the PD6 that'll, or a ban on short stay in residential. This would still pass.
Why'd we just vote against it?
Good point.
Chair, if I may, there are a few of us that were still kind of gathering our thoughts after the last one.
Right.
Is it possible to rehold the previous vote based on that?
Yeah, Chair, I'd like to move that we resubmit the vote.
Does that need a motion, or can we just do that?
Yeah.
It doesn't need a motion. Okay, I'll take Councillor Harvey's motion to resubmit the item. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried. Okay, so we'll get back to the original item. Do we have a mover for the motion? We'll go Councillor Elliott. So we've got a mover. The officer's recommendation for approval for 8 to 12 Wilmot Street.
Which is in a mixed-use area.
Are there any discussion or questions? No. Okay, we'll try again. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against say no.
Aye.
Hands. All those in favour say aye. And against. There we go. Okay. Thank you. So we now move to item 6.1.3, 44, 38A, and
So moved.
okay. A bunch of houses on Nicholas Drive. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Councillor Harvey.
This is one of the biggest houses I think we've had, but it's like enormous. My questions are, I've been scanning through the threatened species list, and there's obviously nothing within that block. There's stuff within 500 metres of it, so I'm satisfied with that. The other bit I'd like to ask about is with regard to fire protection zone, and whether or not any council land will need to be cleared to accommodate a buffer zone around the property.
I don't believe so. The only land that's affected by council is the access lane, and that's already obviously denuded of any vegetation. So I don't believe so.
So land to the top of this property won't, in our area, our Skyline Reserve won't be touched.
Not that is not already covered with fire breaks and the like.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? No. We did have, was it the deputy move that one? There's no other comment. We'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried. Excellent. We now move to item 6.1.4. 1210 Waterworks Road. Change of use of visitor accommodation. Anybody like to move that one? Councillor Elliott. Any comment or debate? Councillor Salt.
Through you to the Director, is this any different to any other Airbnb application? Is there any other reason why we can refuse it? Great, good, thanks.
And it's not in a mixed-use area, it's residential area.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other comment? No, I'll put that. All those in favour.
Yeah, I will make a comment because,
yep.
you know, obviously it's quite funny that we are considering this, but I think we have to, as council, be testament to this ongoing march of visitor accommodation. So those are my comments, and I won't be supporting this.
Yeah, Chair, I also don't want to support this, but it'll be coming back to us in the next few weeks with a recommendation that we overturn it. So while I would much rather vote against it because I'm sick of short stay accommodation eating up rental accommodation in Hobart, we're in this position where our hands are tied yet again with some of these applications tonight, and we still wait for the state government to do something to help ease the situation with housing in not just Hobart but across the whole state. So, you know, the ball's in their court to help us, even though they've said to us it's council's responsibility and that the planning scheme allows us to refuse short stay accommodation. Could I just ask through you to the Director how we should do that based on based on the advice from the state government, that we have tools to reject short stay, but we don't really?
They are limited in nature under the planning directive that we're obliged to consider these applications under.
So the Minister's advice is just totally irrelevant to us, really?
I wouldn't like to comment on
What do you think,
that.
Chair?
Can we just...
No, well, I'm not gonna comment.
Yeah. It's your minister. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So
Point of order, this is getting a bit improper, I think.
Right. We'll keep it to the application in front of us. Councillor Kelly.
Chair, look, I've only been here a few months and I respect the people who've been here quite a while, but I must say I'm getting a little bit frustrated when we get these same proposals come forward or applications, and we're saying exactly the same thing, chapter and verse, meeting after meeting after meeting. The time we're wasting is just, I appreciate it. I'm not saying I'm for or against in this instance, but if it's an absolute no-brainer, why are we even talking about it? A simple statement could be made, whilst your hands are tied, blah, 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 we can't do anything about it. Next item. We're just spending, I'm just hearing this same stuff. It's important, it's been made that many times now. I don't know how much more important we can make. We're on record as saying this, it's in the Mercury newspaper. Everyone knows we don't support it. And a simple little verse at the front can say, we can't say anything about this or do anything about it because it's state government legislation, end of story, next item. I'm just becoming increasingly frustrated with the same diatribe coming out each time.
15 representations, that's why we're hearing it.
Yeah, I just think we've got better things to talk about. Thank you.
We'll put it if there's no other comment. Item is as moved by Councillor Elliott. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no.
Aye.
Show of hands. All those in favour. And against? Okay, we now move to the next item, which I've got the report in front of me, but not the item number, but 6.1.5, 3310 Waterworks Road. Councillor Elliott, thank you. Any question or comment? Councillor Lohberger?
Just through you, Chair, to the Director. Given that we just approved the previous item at the same address, essentially, is there any way that we can refuse this particular application without it coming back to us, without a likelihood of it coming back to us?
Yeah, look, I don't believe so. I think, one potential area that we could have is around density of such activity. In this case, I think we've only got 6 other dwellings or former dwellings that constitute visitor accommodation within the suburb of Demurne itself. So another one's not going to push us over the edge so far as that is concerned.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Tempted to go again, but I won't, John.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill.
If there's no other...
I will just note on this one that this one is before us because the application was called in by the Deputy Lord Mayor.
For good reason.
Councillor Basalt?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points on... Well, question first. Is there something about square meterage, Director, for this one, over 200?
Yeah, both of them. I think because they will push the total floor area over the 200 square metre.
The complex, the Strata complex. Yeah, and we don't have refusal grounds on that.
Well, only on it pushes it into the discretionary or the performance criteria, and you've got to determine the matter under the performance criteria. The performance criteria are fairly limited in what you can refuse under.
Thank you. So 2 observations I'll make for this, which is I held off my comments because I wanted to wait for the second one to come through for this property. We've seen this time and again with strata titles, Collins Street being a good example. Based on a response that I got to a question without notice, it seems that there is nothing that would prevent an entire strata complex becoming a hotel, which is extremely concerning, and this is only a small complex of units really. There's 33 or something in there. And so I would implore the state government to look at strata, if they want to have treat this issue with kid gloves, then I would implore them to at least look at strata title regulations to prevent undercover grabbing of strata title units and turning them into hotels on the fly. It's not good for anyone. We know it's not good, and I look forward to seeing what the 23-24 rating year brings for Airbnb.
Any other comment? Nope, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Show of hands, all those in favour. And against? Carried. Okay, we get to now on to report 7.1, planning advertising.
That, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions, or does Ms Abbey have anything of note?
Thank you, Chair. I was going to draw the committee's attention to 72 Elizabeth Street, which is number 6 on the list. That's the St Luke's Health flagship store on the corner of Elizabeth and Collins Street, Liverpool Street. Sorry. So that they separately have approved internal works, which and they also have their building approvals. So this application is just for signage for the extensive sign on the corner, but I expect those works will begin very shortly.
Any questions? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Can say no. It's carried. 7.2 Delegated Decision Report.
So moved.
Thank you, Deputy. Any comment or questions? Nope.
I did have one.
Oh, Councillor Lohberger.
There's some flood mitigation works going on at what looks to me like Campbell Street Primary School, 231 Campbell Street. Can we just get some details about that?
Yeah, we'll take that one on notice and
Thank
provide you with the details. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Going once, going twice? No, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Can say no. Carried. Number 8, responses to questions without notice. We have 2. Somebody,
So moved.
thank you, Deputy. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Can say no. Carried. We now have questions without notice. Are there any questions?
I have one, Chair.
Councillor Elliott.
I notice when people are making a representation that they're against an application that that their details aren't required, their personal details, but conversely, applicants' personal details are published, made publicly available, and I'm becoming more and more concerned about applications that are coming before us becoming quite personal, where I've heard from applicants, especially around the visitor accommodation issue, where applicants are being targeted to messaging and abuse and things like that, and their property. So I'm wondering what's the reason for us having to publish an applicant's name? Obviously the address and all that sort of thing has to be available. Why is there a reason why we have to publish the applicant's name?
Look, there is, but I'll provide that in writing.
Okay, thank you.
I'll take it on notice and provide it in writing.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay. We'll get someone to move that we close the open and open the closed.
So moved.
Councillor Harvey, all those in favour say aye. Aye. Can say no. Carried. Very good.